I'm always interested in unofficial Super Sentai and Power Rangers projects, taking a formula that's so well known and often played safe and turning it on its head, giving fans a unique take on a franchise that hasn't been done before. Now, unfortunately, most of these projects never amount to anything more than just, what if the Power Rangers said bad words?
Shut up, Dad!
Robot ride!
But recently, something was brought to my attention. A manga series that goes by the name Go Go Loser Ranger, or Ranger Reject. Now the name alone obviously caught my attention, making an obvious reference that would catch any Power Rangers fan's attention. The series was created by Negi Haruba and has been serialized in the company Kodansha's Weekly Shonen magazine in 2021. And in 2024, the manga would receive an anime. It's your typical 12-episode anime, and I've heard nothing but great things about the show. So I decided to go into the anime completely blind and give my thoughts. Join me on this journey with Go Go Loser Ranger. Episode 1 naturally sets the scene for us. Our setting is on this floating fortress that was once the enemy's base of operations, but now acts as a coliseum. We then see our team of Rangers, known here as the Dragon Keepers. They're everything you've come to know and love about Power Rangers and Super Sentai. Multicolored heroes fighting off evil for peace and justice and being loved by the citizens. Every Sunday there's a tournament held on this fortress, where the Rangers fight off the evil forces in front of the audience, putting on a great show for everyone to see. The foot soldiers here are simply known as fighters. You know, the putties, the grunt soldiers that exist solely as cannon fodder. The two teams do battle. It's everything you'd expect. The Rangers using their weapons and teamwork to fight for justice and all that is good. However, there's a twist.
I know you'll crush the defeat speech, buddy.
Oh no, I don't actually have one.
I won't forget this. That sounds cool. Super monstery and evil.
The fights aren't real. This is all a scripted show for entertainment, and there's one fighter in particular who's sick of it, simply known as Fighter D. We don't learn exactly why they all agreed to do this yet, but we do see all the planning and preparation involved. The fighters are responsible for creating the monster of the week for the Rangers to destroy. As a Power Rangers fan, it's fun to see how self-aware they are and all the intricacies that go into the villains.
There's a sense of catharsis that comes from defeating scary monsters. That's what they want!
Or we could make it a cute lion.
We made a lion 7 years ago!
But still, it's Fighter D that is getting sick of doing this. He's tired of being the Rangers' punching bags to stroke their egos for this show. The only fighter that sympathizes with D is Fighter F, trying to calm him down and explain things to him.
The general public out there doesn't know any better. Let's do it for them. By letting the Rangers fight us, we make them heroes and keep the public's dream alive. So then losing means we still win.
During the fight, the Rangers bust out their big blaster and wipe out the bad guys. Dragon Keepers, that's a dragon win! However, one fighter doesn't go down. D. He's chosen today to stand up for his people and fight back against the Rangers. Unfortunately, yeah, he's ultimately just another foot soldier, weak and unimpressive. And before Red Keeper takes care of him, he has some choice words for the fighter.
This isn't the stage for your kind to shine, pal. So why don't you be a good little fighter, shut up, and lose?
Easily beating him, and the crowd goes wild. However, fighters are technically immortal. They still feel pain, but are able to regenerate and also shapeshift their physical form, with D transforming into a human and being approached by a girl to become a recruit for the Rangers. The beginning of the episode, by the way, started with an unknown kid, who we now know was D, being approached for the first time by two people. The episode ends with D agreeing to become a Ranger recruit, so he can train and destroy every single one of them from the inside. D is trying his best to adjust and act like a human. These characters are Hibiki and Suzukiri, junior Rangers training to become the top tier Dragon Keepers. D is confident that he's fooling everyone with his human disguise. Back at the fighter headquarters though, the Rangers show up and aren't happy, demanding answers for why one of them went off script. And it's here we learn what happened. 13 years ago, an evil force invaded Earth, and the Rangers defeated them, with the only remaining survivors being these few fighters. So instead of outright destroying all of them, the Rangers made a deal. The fighters will be allowed to live and coexist albeit in this cave with less than ideal living conditions, in exchange for putting on that Coliseum show every Sunday, so the citizens can be in awe and praise the awesomeness of the Dragon Keepers. Essentially, this show only exists for the Keepers' egos, to be big stars and loved by everyone. Power, fame, fortune, it's all theirs. So as a punishment for this betrayal, the Dragon Keepers will now have 2 recruits looking over them at all times. Fighter A has a problem with this, saying it goes against their peace treaty, but Blue Keeper decapitates him with 1 punch, making their positions clear. The treaty is only between the Keepers and the fighters, with the Keepers clearly having all the power. They simply choose to allow this treaty to exist because it benefits them for the show to keep happening. We also learn that the fighters can't shapeshift without first seeing a picture of what they want to transform into. D does this by looking at a picture of Hibiki and transforming into him. He heads to the Keeper's headquarters and plans to assassinate the Red Keeper. However, Suzukiri accompanies him, and it's here we learn that this school is much larger than D thought, being loaded with cocky and arrogant recruits just itching at the chance to become the main team of Rangers and kill all the fighters. With the biggest jerk being Tokita, this arrogant clown. Literally. D has the chance to stab him with his hidden knife, but Suzukiri de-escalates the situation. Just then, D sees the Red Keeper, without his gear and completely vulnerable. He wants to finish it right here and now, but can't, backing down and chickening out. Once the 2 leave the headquarters though, Suzukiri attacks D, knowing right from the very beginning that he was a fighter in disguise. However, she doesn't finish him, and instead offers them to be partners. And then...
Let's destroy the Ranger Force together.
Just then, the real Hibiki shows up and D makes his escape. Back in the city though, Fighter F is searching for D, but the citizens just see a monster roaming through town, so it's up to the Dragon Keepers to stop him. Keeper Red makes it onto the scene and busts out a divine artifact, an insanely powerful weapon, and the only method to completely destroying the fighters. D sees this and begs for F to just run away, but F finally starts to understand the frustrations that D was talking about. Always being painted as nothing but worthless villains, being treated like less. F stands his ground, but the divine artifact wields godlike powers, and with 1 strike, F is destroyed. D is naturally heartbroken and frustrated with the loss of his friend. Hibiki shows up and says he's sorry that D lost one of his friends, admitting that he overheard the conversation and knows that D is a monster. But oddly enough, Hibiki shows sympathy, saying that they should work together to build a better future for both monsters and humans to coexist in. D doesn't buy it, saying that they are sworn enemies and he's made a promise to slay every single ranger out there. Now's a good time to go over the characters in better detail. D himself is an extremely hot-headed and aggressive person, acting on emotion and immediately wanting to solve everything with violence, which does make him the perfect foot soldier. Don't think, just act. Unfortunately for him though, he is incredibly weak and pitiful. Being a grunt means that his body is fragile. He's not meant to be the strongest warrior out there. The only thing saving him is the fact he's able to regenerate. His sole mission is to destroy the Ranger organization and let evil reign once again. But weirdly enough, we're on his side, because as we've seen with all 5 of the Dragon Keepers so far, they're terrible people. They did fight the good fight and protect the world, but now their true colors are showing. The fighters seem to be submissive and willing to be rehabbed into being good citizens, but the Rangers don't care. They'd rather have them be the punching bags to stroke their egos, slaying indiscriminately while touting positivity and bravery and all that cheesy stuff.
As long as there's someone left to protect, we'll always get back up and keep fighting.
It's literally all just an act for the people. But then there's Hibiki. His overenthusiasm at first does seem a bit sketchy. His big smile and positive attitude just gives you a gut feeling that he has a dark secret. But no, he's the real-life embodiment of what it's supposed to mean to be a ranger. As for Suzukiri, we can continue the episode now to learn a bit more. She meets up with D and has a plan for them, for D to use his mimicry and shapeshift into the Red Keeper, sneak into the headquarters, and steal his divine artifact. Not only is it an insanely powerful weapon, but it's the source of the Keeper's transformation abilities. D finally asks why she's helping him, and Suzukiri gives an answer that doesn't feel very genuine. She just says that the good guys always win, and that it's boring. So D shapeshifts to look like the Red Keeper in his human form, heading down to where the artifacts are located. However, he once again runs into Tokita. D is trying his best to play it cool when Tokita mentions how great it was seeing the Red Ranger destroy that fighter. And surprisingly, D doesn't lose his temper. But it doesn't matter. Tokita recognizes that he's a fraud in disguise and attacks. D tries to fight back, but he's still too weak. Even a junior ranger in training is too strong. Luckily, there's a plan B. B as in bombs. He threatens to blow up everyone if he doesn't hand over the divine artifact. Tokita backs off, and D uses this moment to finally get the upper hand and beats him in a fight, escaping with the artifact. He doesn't get far though, reaching the rooftop and being greeted by the Red Keeper. Not wasting any time, D immediately starts attacking him with the sword, but he's completely outskilled. No matter what D throws at him, the Red Keeper's power is unmatched. Not wasting any breath until the camera crew shows up. And it's so frustrating how cheesy they all are.
Our mission is to protect humanity, which means protecting the world from your kind.
During the battle, D loses his arm and the divine artifact as they both go flying off the roof. D jumps, knowing he can only save one of them. Blue Keeper then puts an end to this, using his artifact on D. And right before he's destroyed, he makes a promise to Red Keeper.
You'll remember me!
I've already forgotten you.
And to the citizens of the world, the brave Rangers save the day once again, with Red Keeper reminding the team what's most important.
We must always appear cool. Otherwise, we wouldn't make good heroes, would we?
However, when he grabs his divine artifact, it disintegrates. D sacrificed his arm and used it to mimic the divine artifact, with the real one now being in Suzukiri's possession. We get a look into how the Dragon Keeper system operates. Essentially, every main ranger has a high school graduation system. We see the main team having a meeting dinner. With them are ideally their predecessors, named Junior First Ranks, the next in line to take over the mantle. And under them are all the other up-and-coming recruits to hopefully work their way up the ladder. And it's here we learn that Suzukiri is next in line to become the Yellow Keeper. And it's here we can presume why she wants to really take down the Rangers. She experiences firsthand how much of frauds and disgusting they all are, whether it be crude comments from Blue Keeper,
Hey, Yellow, you really ought to teach your side piece some manners.
Or when Red Keeper's pupil steps out of line, saying he should be the new leader after the divine artifact was stolen, and in response, Red Keeper, without hesitation, beats him to a lifeless pulp. Suzukiri firsthand witnesses how disgusting and deplorable these heroes really are. We see that D also managed to somehow live. However, he's badly wounded. Luckily though, Hibiki tracked him down and is trying to nurse him back to health. D doesn't want to be associated with him though, since he's a ranger in training. However, Hibiki manages to charm his way to D's heart, complimenting his shapeshifting and healing abilities. It's here we learn about Hibiki's backstory. When he was a kid, he always wanted to do right by others and protect the weak. However, his parents were in a religious cult, wanting to instill backwards logic into Hibiki. For example, he wants to save a helpless kitten from hungry crows, and this is what his father says about that.
Crows have to eat too, or else they'll starve to death. All living things in this world are equally precious. So to tip the scales of life, for us humans to intentionally influence that, isn't that arrogant?
And since he's a little boy, he naturally wants to trust and believe his parents. It's his older sister, however, that wants to snap him out of it. Hibiki secretly watches the Dragon Keepers every Sunday on TV, wanting to be a cool hero like them, but his parents don't want him watching it, since it's violent, and violence is not good for him. So Hibiki's sister says that if his parents are always right, why is he watching the show? She wants him to start thinking for himself and not blindly follow their crazy parents. Because one day at the cult's church, they prayed for their god to show up, and it did, taking the lives of everyone in that building, including Hibiki's parents. Before the god had the chance to strike him down though, his sister saved him, while having her legs crushed in the process. In that moment, Hibiki never felt more vulnerable, and now understood the lies of his parents' teachings. But there was one thing that kept him strong and brave.
I'll protect those precious to me, no matter how strong the enemy may be.
Managing to survive when Blue Keeper saved him and his sister, where he dedicated the rest of his life to becoming a ranger.
What the hell kind of backstory was that? It was way too long!
Okay, thanks, D. So why is Hibiki willing to work with D? He wants to instill what it really means to be a ranger. He doesn't want to see anyone suffer anymore. It's why he sympathized with D when F was destroyed. Hibiki is an idealist. He wants a world where everyone is friends and no more lives need to be lost in meaningless ways. Before they can continue though, a Blue Keeper in training named Aaron shows up to search for D. So Hibiki tries to stall him while D makes a run for it. But instead of running away, D decides to confront Aaron. However, even with a low-rank ranger like Aaron, plus D's wounds still being present, his attacks aren't as strong as he'd like. Aaron chases D around until holding Hibiki hostage. But Aaron isn't sure if this is a trap, if D is using his mimicry to disguise himself. However, Aaron deduces that this isn't a trap, but it's actually Hibiki who manages to grab the scythe and chop off D's head. But it turns out that this was all an elaborate plan, because this was a trick. We learn that D is going to infiltrate the ranger base disguised as Hibiki to learn as much as he can from the inside. And to show how dedicated Hibiki is to supporting D, he cuts off his own hand, saying that compared to the amount of punishment and damage D has been through, this is nothing. With D now one step closer to getting his revenge. D has now successfully infiltrated the Ranger School. It's here we get introduced to a lot of characters whose names I don't expect you to remember. There's Yukino, Usukobo, Ishikawa, Shippo, just to name a few for right now. And the one that's the most confrontational and will be the biggest obstacle for D is Shion. D also keeps hearing noise in Hibiki's dorm, and when he opens the closet, he reveals a girl. It turns out that this is actually another fighter in disguise, named XX. She accidentally got trapped in the school and Hibiki's been sheltering and protecting her, with XX seemingly also having feelings for Hibiki. Happy to hear that D didn't kill him and that he's still alive. With two fighters together now, XX wants to start laying waste to the Rangers, with all of the hot-headedness we saw with D early in the show. But now, D has actually grown a bit as a person, telling XX they don't stand a chance in a straight-up fight, and that he has a plan that's more viable. Pairing D up with someone who was just like him no more than a few episodes ago really shows his growth. D has been given many opportunities to snap at the Rangers for treating him like garbage, but he's managed to keep his cool and teach XX to think more strategically. Just then, Hibiki's sister, Cicera, comes into the room to talk. She's still in the wheelchair after that incident years ago when they were kids. She tells Hibiki that he needs to quit the Rangers and find something new to do with his life, with D responding in character, but also clearly mixing in some of his own emotions and feelings.
Even if the Rangers aren't righteous, I can't just turn a blind eye to it, because I'm here to fight after all.
The episode ends with Pink Keeper stopping some street thugs and talking to herself about how proud she is of her little brother. Yeah, in a complete twist, Pink Keeper, this perfectly abled woman, is Hibiki's sister. This entire episode takes place during the final exam to become Rangers. The recruits are given partners and need to take a key off of the monsters. The monsters, though, are played by the junior first ranks, who are next in line to be Rangers. And of course, D is forced to partner up with Shion, who clearly has an attitude problem, and their opponents are Tokita, who's still wearing the injuries of his previous encounter with D, and Suzukiri. Every junior first class ranger has a key, and the recruits need to get their hands on it in order to pass. The exam doesn't go well initially, with Shion being very standoffish, wanting to work alone, and D ultimately not really caring about his safety. However, D eventually gets sick of running, considering that's all he's ever done since he's decided to take a stand against the Rangers, so instead, he uses his brain. Seeing that Usukobo is terrified herself, D asks her if she can draw, which it turns out she can. Really well, by the way, D even telling her to maybe pursue a career in art instead of being a ranger, which is kind of a backhanded compliment, but hey, he's trying his best. He had her draw pictures of Tokita and the Greenkeeper's protege, Hisui, using those pictures to shapeshift into them. He blasts a fire extinguisher and uses the debris as cover, accidentally attacking the other one over and over and over again, until one of them loses their tempers and starts fighting amongst themselves. D uses this opening to attack Tokita, using reverse psychology to goad Shion into jumping back into the fight despite being completely thrashed. Any type of training or professionalism has been thrown out of the window. The emotions and intent are real. Tokita has lost his temper, Shion wants to prove himself, with D ready to strike down Tokita and end him for real. But before either of them get the chance to end this fight...
Day 1 of final exams is complete.
Tensions and emotions are still at an all-time high, with D realizing that there's only one key for each of them to steal. He realizes that this means that despite every recruit having a partner, only one of the two will get to continue forward. Until then, we get some personal time with D and Shion. Shion giving some light into why he's here. His brother was killed by a monster 3 years ago. However, D is immediately caught off guard by this, since there hasn't been a boss monster in 13 years. So D now feels completely angry at the idea that a monster would still be roaming free, while the fighters were forced into slavery. Back in Hibiki's room, a technician comes to fix the door, and when he finds XX, she starts attacking him. But the technician says he wants to help her too, saying he's not a fan of fighting, hence why he does this kind of work. XX once again seeing the kindness that humanity does have to offer. But the technician is quickly executed by that god monster that attacked Hibiki's family years ago. This is Lord Peltrola, a boss monster who's finally decided to make his presence known, with XX hesitantly joining up with him. The next day at the exam, Izome, the blue junior first class, has a talk with D, explaining what's going on with the recruits. The strongest of the partners have all split off and made an alliance with everyone else. Shion, Urabe, Yukino, Akibayashi, and Ishikawa have all betrayed their partners, believing they're the strongest of the group, leaving D, Koguma, Usukobo, Kurusu, and Shippo all alone, the weaker links to fail the exam. This completely angers D, and sure, he was planning to betray Shion to fulfill his mission, but when it happens to him, he won't stand for that. So D rallies up all the rejects to keep on fighting and form an alliance amongst themselves. The opposing team has all but one key, the yellow one. The B team ambush her and try to fight. Naturally, she's way too strong and overpowers all of them. But then D says this.
Suzukiri, I don't know how you think a hero should behave, but it seems like anyone can become one, even if they're really a bad guy.
And Suzukiri surrenders the key on her own free will, realizing that this is D in disguise. However, before they can celebrate too much, Yukino just walks on by and takes the key out of Kurusu's hand, leading to a standoff, before the bell rings once again. The episode ends with Lord Peltrola going on a killing spree, with XX just looking on, and Izome being the only one aware of what's happening. It seems that Shion's team has gotten all the keys and are the winners of the exam. However, D pulls a fast one and steals the key back, technically against the rules since the bell rang. However, when Shion and friends show up, they say they didn't hear a bell. Yup, it was another clever trick D had up his sleeve. He had Koguma rewire one bell to go off early and catch off the opposing team. Shion's team chases down D's and they play hot potato with the key. Kurusu wants to redeem himself since he let the key go in the first place. He's the fastest runner of all the recruits, and when the key goes flying into the air and the real bell rings, Kurusu has it in his possession. Only one more day of final exams until the winning recruits become upperclassmen. Somewhere else in the school, though, a real fight is occurring between Lord Peltrola and Izome. More casualties are lost, but luckily Izome has a divine artifact to fight back with. We quickly see a bond forming between our B team, or the loser rangers. Koguma finds out that Hibiki isn't really Hibiki. However, he doesn't really care, since he did help Koguma find his confidence, picking him up off the floor and complimenting his technical work with rewiring the bell.
Whoever you are, you still help me realize what my role should be. Thanks for that.
Koguma has relied on his best friend Urabe this whole time, so being betrayed by him completely shattered his confidence and will to continue. He goes downstairs to talk it out with Urabe, but runs into Lord Peltrola and Izome, who's been beaten down. Koguma runs away and calls for the elevator, and when Izome crawls her way there, Koguma returns to protect Izome, throwing her into the elevator and sending her to safety, while he stands up to the monster. This is why he's here, to stand up to evil and protect the weak. Knowing that this is a futile effort, he valiantly lunges towards Peltrola, and is slain with one single blast, much to the horror of XX, and Izome is now able to call for help. It's time for the final day of the exam, and Koguma shows up. Of course, this is XX in disguise. The two teams decide to have one-on-one fights. Let the true best Rangers win. Before they fight, D reveals that Koguma, the real one, made an enhancement to their swords, unlocking a new level to them. The Burst Form, creating a giant blade that's powered by the wielder's strong emotions. It only lasts for a short time, but Shion's betrayal of trust, as well as D getting closer to completing his mission, the sword is now at its full power. But it's here we learn why Shion wants to become a ranger. His brother was killed 3 years ago by a monster. He tried telling Red Keeper about it, but he was shrugged off. And the Red Keeper's ego was once again too much. And he said this about Shion and his older brother.
Your big brother was killed by some weak-ass fighter. He chose the wrong career. He never had any business trying to be a ranger.
So that's why he's here, to avenge his brother and destroy not only the monsters, but the Rangers as well, giving his sword the Burst Form. And now, the fight is even. It's now a fight between wills. Whose will is stronger? Kurusu is fighting for Vanity, to become a ranger for the girls. Which, even though he's on D's team, that does sound like he'll only end up like the current Dragon Keepers. While Yukino is fighting for something more personal. XX shows up with the key, easily winning her fight, and even beating Yukino. However, XX isn't here for a plan. She wants to kill any and all Rangers, and despite having Yukino's key, XX goes in for the kill, but Kurusu stops her, saying he surrenders. His main goal is for the pretty girls, so letting one die wouldn't fit his style. Shippo learns that he doesn't need a weapon to fight, cause he's got 2 big guns right here, baby. And before landing a powerful punch on Akibayashi, she surrenders and gives him the key. Usukobo and Ishikawa are fighting. Usukobo is very kind and gentle, but we see she's not one to be messed with, blowing up a car with her and Ishikawa inside, willing to go through anything to win. Shippo then shows up, and the team gets another key. Now just leaving Shion and D. Back on the surface, we see Izome in pain, and the Blue Keeper making his way onto the scene. It's here we learn a bit about Blue Keeper. He's the most foul-mouthed and crude of the Rangers, and when Izome was assigned to him as his junior, she straightened him out a bit, telling him to keep his mouth shut and never say anything ever in front of the public. Which he's listened to, clearly caring about Izome. Blue Keeper busts his way down into the exam area and spots XX, beating her senselessly until she tells him where her boss is. She refuses to say anything, so Blue Keeper tortures her, putting her through some of the most excruciating pain his power can do. Eventually, D shows up to save her, still playing dumb as Hibiki and thinking that that's the real Koguma. Blue Keeper gets sick of this and just decides to kill him too. But D isn't going down like that, using the Saber's Burst Form and putting all of his passion and emotion into this one single attack to fulfill his mission and kill the Rangers. Unfortunately, the Divine Artifact protected Blue Keeper, but without it, he would have been dead. The episode ends with Blue Keeper attacking XX and D, no longer playing nice. With no other choice, XX takes Blue Keeper and D to Lord Peltrola, and D is in shock to see he's still alive. Blue Keeper and Peltrola get into a fight, with D rooting for neither of them. He can't believe that a monster boss, his leader, the creatures his kind are supposed to look up to, was a coward in hiding all these years, allowing the fighters to suffer. Peltrola tells D it's time to work under him, saying he's already slain some Rangers. And how does D respond? He stabs his master through the shoulder. XX is furious at this betrayal and asks why he did it. She says they're comrades. And when D hears that word, all that comes to mind are his fellow Ranger cadets. Blue Keeper then interrupts this moment and the two continue fighting, with all the other first-class Rangers fighting off duplicates, since Lord Peltrola has the ability to clone himself. We get a look into their cool special abilities. Hisui has a mouth that literally eats the monsters. First Class Pink is a healer, which is hilarious, and Suzukiri is able to use a remote to stop time, fast forward, and rewind. During all of this fighting, D is having a fantasy, imagining how the world will be once the Rangers are gone and evil rules the planet. It's all of course comedic, being treated like a celebrity and eating at all the fancy restaurants. But during this, some special guests make an appearance. Shippo, Usukobo, and Kurusu. D saying that they're his friends, special guests who are allowed to sit at the table. His fantasy, his dream, involves the Rangers, who he's vowed to destroy. But after spending all this time with them, he's grown feelings for them. A genuine friendship. However, his fantasy is interrupted by Lord Peltrola, disgusted at the sight of these humans, and slays every single one of them in front of D, who's horrified. I mean, what other outcome did D realistically expect from a world run by evil monsters? The metaphorical angel on D's shoulder takes on the form of Hibiki in this dream, saying that D was so caught up in his revenge, he never thought of what life would be like under a boss monster's reign. When D snaps back to reality, he sees XX clinging on to dear life after sustaining all that damage. She's also confused on what her purpose is in life. She says that they were created to help monsters and rule the world, but is that all their life is really worth? And with that, D knows what he has to do. Back at the exam area, we see the cadets putting aside all of their differences in this state of emergency, but they quickly run into another copy of Lord Peltrola. And being the bright-eyed recruits that they are, they don't back down, especially after finding out he's the monster responsible for Koguma's death.
Because we're also members of the Rangers!
But there's still one more ally who joins the cadets. D. He's come back to stand his ground. No longer fighting for evil, but still not fighting for good. He's now fighting for himself, the only person he can trust. The ensuing battle is very intense. A boss monster that was able to take out a junior first class surely could wipe out an entire team of rookies. And despite that, they all work together to fight the evil. And for the first time ever in this entire series, these Rangers feel like Rangers. They're real underdogs putting up a fight against impossible odds. There's no outcome where they could possibly survive. And they don't care. The ideologies of what it means to be a Ranger flows through their veins. Eventually, Lord Peltrola gets a hold of Yukino, threatening to decapitate her. But instead of acting irrationally, D thinks this through, telling everyone to drop their weapons and surrender. Everyone is completely horrified at this ridiculous plan, but D tells everyone to trust him. He has a plan that goes off perfectly. The weapons were mimics made by D, and together they use the surprise to get the upper hand on Lord Peltrola. And together, they all actually managed to kill him. These low-level cadets just took down a powerful monster with basic weapons. And even in a show like this, it was the power of teamwork that made it possible. A piece of the puzzle that's been missing from this entire show since the beginning. Why? Because up until this moment, we haven't seen a real team of Rangers. All we've seen were people playing pretend. We then get Blue Keeper's backstory. He was a common street thug stealing money, but unlike his friends who were spending the money on pointless, lavish things, Blue Keeper, or his real name, Shogo Aoshima, took that money to an orphanage, wanting to do everything he could to make sure that these kids have a good life. The kids are thankful. However, as we've already learned, Shogo isn't a people person. This is the person Izome saw when she studied under him, a kind but misunderstood man. After a run-in with a monster, he was attacked and horribly disfigured, where Red Keeper then approaches him to become the new Blue Keeper. He agrees, bringing us to today. This is the moment where, just like XX and just like D himself, we have conflicting feelings. When the show started, we were just like D. Seeing the Rangers be the big phonies they were was frustrating, and we wanted to see them exposed and dismantled. But then come along the cadets, kids who, just like you and me, grew up watching teams like this on TV and want to be just like them. They've proven that's what's most important to them. And then we have Bluekeeper. Someone who always came off as an evil man, who was hot-headed and always resorted to violence. He had no redeemable qualities, but he still was a good guy. He did save Hibiki and his sister from that monster. He was spending his life savings on an orphanage. He does care about people and will fight the bad guys to protect the world, but it just so happens we're following the story of a bad guy. Back to the story, we see Bluekeeper still fighting the real Lord Peltrola, and in one powerful move, destroys Lord Peltrola. But Bluekeeper's fight isn't over just yet. Fighter D is here to fight for what he believes in. D sheds his disguise and attacks Bluekeeper. It's a very unfair fight considering Bluekeeper has a divine artifact, but surprisingly, D manages to hold his own, actually giving Bluekeeper a challenge. D puts everything he's got into this fight. He's taken abuse after abuse, but now is his chance to do what he's dedicated his life to. He's going to kill a ranger. But just then, a blast pierces Bluekeeper's neck. It's XX and a remaining piece of Lord Peltrola. The wound is fatal. Bluekeeper, only having a few moments of life left in his body, says that this is his punishment. He became a ranger so he could have all the money and power in the world to take care of what mattered most to him. But he ended up turning his back on it, getting lost in the power and fame. Bluekeeper's final words being, "A fool who's only half good can't defeat evil," before dying in D's arms. Mission accomplished. One Dragon Keeper down. D got what he wanted, so why does the victory feel so hollow? D saying that it doesn't mean anything if it goes down like this. News of Bluekeeper's death spreads throughout the media, with Red Keeper being especially upset. Not because of his ally's death, but because Shogo was the perfect height. He really brought together the group photos and poses, and who knows how long it'll take to find another keeper who's the perfect height.
This ruins our group victory pose. Your height was the one thing that really helped us bring that ideal balance.
In other positive news though, it turns out that Koguma is actually alive. All of the cadets are happy that their friend is alive, seemingly wanting to move past their selfish acts and be together. And D? He promises that he will defeat the Dragon Keepers with his own bare hands. And that's the end of Go-Go Loser Ranger. At least the anime's first season. Oh, come on, I know, right? Like, it's only 12 episodes, so I don't know what I expected. By the time this video is out, however, season 2 of the show should be airing, so I'll wait for that to finish up before I make another video. Because, yeah, if it wasn't clear, I absolutely love this show. What I love is that all of the characters are flawed. We start off rooting for D and the downfall of the Dragon Keepers. The show sets us up with D's perspective. All of the forces of good are nothing but frauds, who are just as despicable as the villains. Apart from the awful Dragon Keepers, we meet Suzukiri, who's a snake in the grass, as well as Tokita, an arrogant jerk. But as time goes on, we meet genuine people. Guys and girls who want to become rangers for virtuous means. They don't care about the vanity or the fame or fortune. They want to help people and be a force of good. Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? As we saw in the Ranger exam, the test is designed to pit friends against each other, and it worked. Shion and his group all abandoned their friends for the sake of their own personal gain. It feels like the Dragon Keepers are slowly trying to break people down to be more corrupt like they are. You enter the academy bright-eyed and ready to do good and be a good role model, but the reality of the situation is much darker. And if you're not willing to hurt your friends and bend your morals, you're not gonna make it. However, that leads to problems. Because while sure, some of the Dragon Keepers work together for their own gain, but you also end up creating people like Suzukiri, who will stab you in the back the moment they get the chance. D had so much growth in this first season. He's proof that you don't need to be a product of your own upbringing, born to fight monsters and destroy humans. But the more time he spent with good humans, the more his mission became difficult. He never outright admits this, but it's so obvious that all D and all the fighters really wanted was to be treated equally. The fighters were created, not born. They just as easily could have been told to do good and protect people, and they would have done it. So many of the cadets dislike the establishment. Suzukiri, Hibiki, Shion. They all wanted to take down the Rangers because they know how corrupt and immoral they are. I like that when Bluekeeper dies, D feels nothing. He doesn't know it yet, but killing the Rangers isn't going to make him feel better. What D truly wants is justice. Justice for his friends and allies, for them to live freely and not be treated like slaves. Right now, it's the Rangers. Then it could be Lord Peltrola. But what happens after that? D searching for revenge will just lead him to another face, and then another, and then another. But he doesn't know any better. All he knows is fighting, which is why I'm really curious to see what happens next. He already had so much growth. He's incredibly stubborn, sure, but he's not stupid. He's learning about life outside of being a monster who exists only to fight Rangers. What is a hero? What is a villain? When you read this manga or watch this anime, who are you rooting for? That's what I love about this. You decide for yourself who's in the right and who's in the wrong. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys again when Season 2 wraps up.